Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Adobe FrameMaker webinar series. This is part 9 of the Adobe FrameMaker Essentials Learning Series. And this particular webinar is on the use of pages in Adobe FrameMaker. In case this is your first webinar within the series, very briefly, my name is Barb Binder, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. I am the owner and lead instructor at Rocky Mountain Training. We are located outside of Denver, Colorado. I'm a longtime trainer on a lot of different programs, including FrameMaker. I started with FrameMaker in the early 90s as both a user and a trainer. I am an Adobe community expert, which means I volunteer to answer questions on the community forums, including the FrameMaker forum. And I was an Adobe certified instructor for the duration of that program, which means that I was continuously certified on the programs you see listed here, tested to make sure I knew what I was talking about. And Adobe terminated that program at the end of last year. So now I'm just a regular instructor again, like I was when I started my career back in the late 80s. So if you would like to stay in touch, you might want to get a screenshot of this page. It has the Rocky Mountain Training website. It has my email. As a heads up, I have maintained a blog for many years to address questions from my students that come in after a class has ended. I have years of FrameMaker questions and answers on that blog that you might find helpful. You can go check it out if you want to, and bookmark it if you think it's helpful. I'm spending more time these days answering questions on the community forums and less time on that blog. And if that's new for you, you might want to take a moment to go to community.adobe.com, scroll down the page until you find the FrameMaker icon and click it. When the FrameMaker forum page loads, click on the discussions link and then bookmark it. This is a forum that's hosted by Adobe. People come and use this and access the forum worldwide. It has years of past questions and answers on FrameMaker, and you can post your own questions. In my opinion, there are no stupid questions. So if you have a question about FrameMaker, just ask us there. That's the quickest place to get an answer. I try to stop by every day, but there are a lot of people that are answering questions there. So if you get stuck, post your question, you'll get an answer pretty quickly, in my experience. Now, today's webinar is all about working with pages in Adobe FrameMaker. For somebody migrating from Word, for example, they don't understand why FrameMaker has different kinds of pages. If you have used FrameMaker at all, you've already been working on body pages, but maybe you don't know what master pages do yet, or perhaps it's the reference pages that are baffling. So very briefly, because I'll get into this in great detail during the webinar, there are 3 types of pages in FrameMaker. Body pages are going to have the content that people are opening up our documentation to read. This is where we're going to have our text, our images to support our text, our tables, all that's happening on the body pages, and the body page content changes from page to page to page. Master pages are used to specify the page layout, paper size, margins, columns, that sort of thing. But they also hold the repeating elements. So that's where you'd put things like page numbers that repeat on every single page, and headers and footers and repeating graphics. Those are all master page items. And then the reference pages are where we store things that either we want to refer to or FrameMaker needs to refer to. A user never sees a reference page in its entirety. They see pieces of the reference page that are used in a FrameMaker document. I'll show you how that's going to work. And it's also a place you can store things that you need to look at, including notes to yourself about how you've done something. That can be very helpful. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start the webinar. So I'm starting out in FrameMaker with a finished document open just for a quick orientation. I am using FrameMaker version 2022, which is the current version as of this recording. What I'm talking about in this webinar is applicable to FrameMaker 2020 and 2019 and 2017. So anyone using a current version of FrameMaker is going to be able to understand what I'm talking about, and it's going to be applicable to all those different versions. This is a finished file, and I just wanted to show you a few things about this document. You're looking at body page 1 right now. This is the first page of a chapter in a document. If I want to go to the next page, there's lots of ways of navigating through a document. I'm using the buttons at the bottom right now. You can see body page 2 on the left and body page 3 on the right. And what I was saying about body pages is the content changes from page to page to page. When you are working in FrameMaker, you're spending most of your time getting the content onto the body pages, making it look pretty, and making it as accurate as possible. Most of our focus is on the body page content. The page layout and the repeating elements are on the master pages. And so in this case, there's a side head column on the left of all these pages. So for example, the headings are straddling the side head in the main column, and most of the content is in the main column. So that's a page layout command. And then the repeating elements are page numbers and the line down here. This is the chapter title, and that's the section that we're in right now. Facing pages has the same information on the opposite side. All of that is happening on the master pages. And the 3 page types are visible at the bottom of the view menu. Remember, the view menu controls what you see on screen. So if you want to see the master pages, you got to go to the view menu and then click them. So I'll go ahead and click on the master pages. And that's going to remove the body page content. Just keeps the template frame sitting here so you can see where it's going to be when we go back to the body pages. But the focus when you are here is on the headers and the footers and the repeating graphics. And then finally, the reference pages are going to be accessible also from the bottom of the view menu. There is some information here on generated pages. On the left, there's table of contents information. On the right is an index. And then here's a master page mapping table. And then just some general information that we can access through FrameMaker via a dialog box. I'll give you more information on this when we get there. But again, navigation happens in the view menu. Okay, so with that, let's now focus on just the body pages. The main thing to remember is my first point at the top of the page. Body pages will show us what's on the master pages. That's the repeating elements and the page layout. But they contain the document content, and that's what changes from page to page. I've got lots of webinars about how to add content to the page and how to format it and control it. So I'll leave the contained document content to the other webinars. Let's focus on things that don't get covered elsewhere. The idea of flow tags, the Autoconnect property, how you can easily update your paper size, your margins, and your columns across a document. I also want to show you vertical justification, which you might not be aware of, and I'll mention baseline synchronization. And then a question I see a lot from my students as well as on the forums is how do you add and delete body pages? And how come when I delete a body page at the end of a document, does it keep coming back? Let's go look at that. So here we are back in FrameMaker, and I want to begin by giving you a visual look at a flow so you can see what that looks like. This document has a template frame on page 1, and there is a flow tag assigned called Flow A. And that's the default for any new FrameMaker document. Anytime you choose File New, you get a template frame, and you get a flow tag assigned, and the Autoconnect property is turned on. Now, here's my visual for a flow tag. I'm going to zoom all the way out to 25% magnification. I'm going to click on the first page, and then choose Edit, Select All in Flow. And FrameMaker is going to respond by picking up everything in Flow A, which you can see is absolutely everything in this document. Starting on page 1, it has all the text, it has anchored frames, it has an anchored table, more anchored frames with graphics, more graphics. All of that is inside Flow A. So that's what a flow looks like. And if you picture yourself in Microsoft Word, if you were going to type this content into Word for inclusion into FrameMaker, you would make a new Word document, start typing at the top, and keep on typing until you finish. When you import that into FrameMaker, that's going to import into Flow A and flow continuously until the end. So with that visual, let me now show you how this is set up. You're looking at a brand new document. This is a very similar file to what you would get if you went to the File, New dialog box and you clicked on Portrait. Because I'm in the US, this page is 8.5 inches by 11 inches. It has one column defined and 1 inch margins all the way around. When I click inside and you look at my status bar, you can see that FrameMaker has already assigned a flow tag to this frame. It says Flow A down here in the lower left-hand corner. And in the bottom middle, you can see this is a one-page document. It says 1 of 1. When you look at these dotted lines, you might be perceiving those as the margin guides, which they are. That's actually the frame boundaries. FrameMaker puts everything in frames. That's where it got its name from. So there's a frame sitting right there. And as I said, in a new default document, Flow A is assigned and the Autoconnect property is enabled. Now, as a quick way of showing you what Autoconnect looks like, I'm going to be pasting text in from Microsoft Word. I'm not advocating that as the preferred workflow to get text from Word to FrameMaker. I really think you should go through File, Import File, because it lets you take advantage of style mapping and removing multiple returns automatically on import. That's the better way to go. But there's less steps if I paste it, and it will effectively teach the concepts. That's why I'm taking that shortcut. So my cursor is inside this frame. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Paste. And there's more text than can fit on this page. So the Autoconnect property is going to tell FrameMaker if the text can't fit to add a new page with a new template frame and connect them automatically. So you'll see that as I click Paste. And FrameMaker is doing exactly as described. Now, if I had 30 pages of content when I import or I paste, it would add 29 more pages after page 1 and connect them all automatically. That's the Autoconnect property. I'm going to undo twice. And then I don't need this extra page, so I'm going to use the Save command, because the Save command is the quickest way to delete empty pages at the end of a document. I'll click Save. And if you're thinking, that doesn't work for me, there's reasons why it might not. I'll get there. But now I want to disable the Autoconnect property so you can see the difference. I'm going to go to the View menu and I'm going to go to the Master Pages. This frame right here, I can select if I either Control click on it or I just go and select the Select Object tool from the toolbox. I'll go ahead and click it. You can now see the frame boundaries. That really is a frame. And then I'm going to disable Autoconnect. Now, the commands to manipulate a text frame are found in 2 different locations. Either one works. It's the same dialog box. We can either go to Format, Customize Layout, Customize Text Frame, which takes you to the text frame properties. Here's text frame, and here's my flow tag, and here's my Autoconnect. I can do it here, or I'm going to cancel. And I could go to Graphics menu, Object Properties. This is a text frame. It's going to bring up the exact same dialog box. Again, here's the Autoconnect property. Doesn't matter which one you use. I tend to use whichever one I think of first, or whichever one I'm closest to, because I know they're the same. If you hadn't made that connection yet, now you know they are as well. I'm going to go ahead and click twice on the check mark to disable Autoconnect. Click, click. 2 clicks on a check mark that has an as-is state in the middle to get it fully off. And then I'm going to click Apply. And then I'm going to return to the body pages. Now, I'm going to paste the exact same text in again, keeping in mind Autoconnect has now been disabled. So if I right-click and I hit Paste, we know the text isn't going to fit. FrameMaker is not going to make a new page for you. It's going to flow whatever it can on this page, and it's going to stop abruptly. That black line at the bottom indicates that that text is overset, which means it does not fit in this frame and does not appear anywhere else in the document. You would not want to print this now as a final version thinking you're done, because we're missing text. We'd have to somehow figure out how to get that text to go elsewhere. And the easiest thing to do is just not disable the Autoconnect property. So I'm going to undo to put it back. 1, 2, 3 undos to put it back. Then I'll go back to my View menu, back to Body Pages. I'm going to right click for the last time and hit paste. And because Autoconnect is back on again, I've now got those 2 pages back in place. The next thing I'd like to show you is 2 different flow level commands. These commands are going to target any frames assigned a particular flow tag wherever they appear and change them all at once, unless the frame itself has overrides applied to it. Now, speaking of overrides, I'm noticing that this text has text overrides on it, and that's pretty typical for text coming from Word. So I'm going to take just a moment to click in the story. I'll tap Control A for Select All, and I'm going to assign the body style, which will reformat all that to use the definition for body in this document. And then here's a look at the first of the 2 flow level commands. I'm going to go to the Format menu. I'm going to come down to Page Layout and Column Layout. Now, column layout lets us change both the margins and the columns in this one dialog box, and it targets the flow. Right here, you can see that flow A is specified, and the OK button actually says Update Entire Flow, because that's exactly what it's going to do. Now, I'm going to make 2 quick changes. I'll change the columns to 2 and the top margin to 2. It doesn't matter where I am. FrameMaker is going to find any frame tagged with flow A that doesn't have any frame overrides and change it. And you can see both of the frames that are visible have gone to 2 columns and have the new top margin. But that also went back over to the master pages and changed that frame as well. I want to take just another moment to talk about the other flow level command that you can choose from the Format menu. This is going to impact any frame using flow A that doesn't have any overrides. And this is going to produce a vertical justification. This is not important in technical documents. If that's what you're doing, that's probably why you're not aware this feature exists. But for book publishing, publishers often require that all of the text is flush against the top of the margin and the top of the top margin and the bottom of the bottom margin. If you look at the bottom margins down here, they're not exactly even. So what we can do is go to the Format menu, come down to Page Layout, and then choose Line Layout. And if I enable Feather, FrameMaker is going to increase the space between the lines and between the paragraphs to push all that text down to the bottom margin. When I click Update Flow, FrameMaker is going to find every frame using the default Flow A tag and vertically justify it. Now, this is fine because this text in the last column was almost down there anyway. I can cause a problem for myself, though, if I select this text and I delete it. You can see what's going on here. FrameMaker is feathering not just between the paragraphs, but also between the lines, and that doesn't look great. So you can go back and tweak it. The command, again, is Format, Page Layout, Line Layout. I can say, do not add space in between the lines of my paragraph, only between the paragraphs. And if I do that, it will straighten this out. Now, while I'm still here, let me just say there's yet another feature you probably haven't used and most of you will not need, and that's baseline synchronization. The baseline is the imaginary line that all the text is sitting on. So certain letters descend below the baseline, but just imagine it's a line, and every line of text is aligned on that baseline. If you want the baselines to align across columns, you can enable baseline synchronization. The key to using that command is you just set up the synchronized paragraphs with the line spacing of and put in your body text line spacing. In my case, it would be 14. And you have to enable fixed line spacing in basic properties. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If you choose to enable both baseline sync and feather, feather always wins. They're typically used one or the other, not together. I'm going to turn this back off again because I don't think it's that important for most of us doing technical document layout. But I have feather still on. I still have this extra spacing in the column, which looks terrible. And you'll notice I removed the interline padding space between the lines, put it at 0. That's why when I update flow, it can only add space between the paragraphs, and it can only add so much. And so that last column ends where it would naturally, which is perfectly acceptable in book layout. So let's talk about adding and deleting pages in FrameMaker. This is a of concern for new users. They never understand how to do this. They get themselves into all kinds of trouble. We don't want that. This is way easier than you think it is. So sit tight for a second if you're here for this piece of information. Let me tell you, I've got a double-sided document right here, which means I have left and right pages. I have these enormous running heads at the top so you can keep track of if it's a left or a right page, because that's going to come into play as I'm talking. And we can control the pagination under Format, Page Layout, Pagination. A document can be single-sided or double-sided. If double, you can decide if you want it to be a right first page or a left first page. I'm using the normal right first page in a double-sided document. You can specify this on the way in to make it a new file, or you can change an existing file using pagination. Also in here are the commands that you're looking for. Remember I said the single fastest way to delete empty pages at the end is by just saving? That's because the default is to delete empty pages before saving and printing. I know that, and so I take advantage of that all the time. But when those extra pages won't delete, you want to check this. This is pagination, and you want to see if it's set to make page count even or page count odd, or don't change page count. Those are some reasons why the extra page isn't going to delete. Right now, mine is set to delete, which is great. I'll just leave it. I'm going to hit cancel. And you can see I've got this double-sided document, but I'm actually going to zoom out again so you can see the entire document. I'm just going to go to 25% magnification again. And that's why I have the big heads up here. You can see this is a right page. This is a left and a right. This pair is seen together. This pair is seen together. That one on its own. So let's say you want to add text after page 3. Here's what a new user will do, and I want to say to all of you, stop doing this. You will find the insert menu and you'll find disconnected pages, and you will ignore the warnings that are going to come up when you try to do it. So I'm going to add one page after page 3. I'll just click add, and FrameMaker then says, this is going to make disconnected pages. Are you sure you want to do this? The answer is no, you do not want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And when I add a disconnected page, it no longer flows through the document. If I click on a page and I choose Edit, Select All, and Flow, it hops right over the disconnected page. Numbering doesn't increment through the disconnected pages. This is going to be a problem. So if you realize, oh gosh, I have disconnected pages, you should zoom out so you can find them, click in the main flow, select it, you can see which pages it's hopping over, and then you just come back and you delete them. Unless you have a good reason for a disconnected page, you do not want to add it. So I'm going to click this page. I'm going to go back to the Format menu. I'll come down to Document, and I'm going to choose Delete Pages. And I'll say I want to get rid of 4 of 4. It goes away, and now it just flows all the way across like it used to. If I choose Edit, Select All, and Flow, things are good again. So how do you add content? Well, again, I'm going to stay in this view for a few minutes. You just paste in the content or you place it. So putting my cursor up here, well, see, I'll put it here because I said I wanted to add it after page 3. So I'll just press the Enter key. I'm going to right click and I'm going to pick Paste. I made the text red so you could see it. If you add text in the middle of a document, everything just reflows. It's that simple. If you want to delete a page when it's in the main flow, you don't use delete page. You just delete the content you no longer want. So if this red text is what you no longer need, if you delete it, it's going to close it back up again. That's how you add and delete pages. You paste content or you import content and you delete the content. Let FrameMaker flow with the Autoconnect property. That's it. You're making it way harder than you need to if you're a new user messing around with those disconnected pages. Just don't do it unless you've got a good reason. Now, you can remember that my document is set to delete empty pages on save. I've got an extra page here. When I click save, it's going to delete that page. So I want to go ahead and force another empty page. So I'll just come along here and press enter, 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 enter until there's another page there. And then I'll just undo it. And that leaves the empty page. So there are additional commands that you want to be aware of that can control what happens with the empty pages at the end. If you set your pagination properties to be don't change page count, then when you save it, it's not going to change the page count. That's the problem. This is currently ending on an odd page. If you say, make the page count odd and you save it, it's going to keep that empty page. That's a problem. If you say make it even because you want the next chapter to start on an odd page, that would be fine. So this says make it even. Remember, 6 is even, 7 is odd. So I'll say make page count even and hit set. And now that extra page goes away. And when I save my work, it doesn't come back. If I go back to Pagination and I say make page count odd and I hit set and I save it, it's going to be there. If I delete it manually and I go to Format, Document, Delete Pages, 7. Now it's set to make page count odd and I save it, it's going to come back. Now, Pagination Properties also lives in the book window, and this is really a better place to control it because you can control the whole book at one time. So if these chapters 2 through the end of the book, are set to start on a right-hand page, the page count of the chapters needs to be set to even so that it can do that automatically. If I right-click them and I show you my pagination properties at the book level, you can see they're double-sided. Their first page is going to be right, which means the page count needs to be even for all the previous chapters. If you delete one of those pages and then you update your book, it's going to come back if it's set to even. That's usually the main reason why a page doesn't delete automatically when you just save it. There's one more reason I'll get to shortly. Okay, so let's move on and talk more about master pages. I want to cover 3 topics here: the default master pages that FrameMaker creates for you and how to use them, when to create a custom master page and how to apply it, and I want to show you 2 advanced use cases of intentional multiple text flows, not the unintentional disconnected pages we add by accident, but I want to show you a multi-language document and rotated pages within FrameMaker file. We are now in yet another version of this same document. You'll notice that there is no information in the top or the bottom margin on any of these body pages. That's where we're going to be putting our running heads, information that identifies where we are in the document. Potentially, it will include the book name, the chapter name, the subhead name. Always page numbers are going to be included. Also, potentially revision numbers or revision dates might be in there while you're working on the files. Sometimes they're part of the final file. It just depends. But if you want to add any repeating information to this document, you need to do it on the master pages. So as we get here, I'd like you to notice that there are 2 pages in front of you. This is the default left master page on the left-hand side and the default right master page on the right-hand side. If you glance down at the middle of my screen on the status bar, if you click on one page or the other, it either says left 1 of 2 or right 2 of 2. There are 2 default masters in a double-sided document. Anything you put on the left master immediately appears on all the left body pages. Anything you add to the right master immediately appears on all the right body pages. In a single-sided document, you just have one default master, it's a right master, and a single-sided document only has right-hand pages. That's also going to be pre-assigned to all the pages in that document. Now, when you look more closely at one of these 2 pages, you're going to see that there are 3 frames on each of these 2 pages. There's one at the top, there's one at the bottom, and there's one in the middle. The top and bottom frames are called background frames, and background frames do not have a flow tag. Content you put in there simply repeats on every single page. It doesn't flow through the document. You put your header information in this frame and your footer information in this frame. In the middle, you have your template frame. And this is just showing you where the content is sitting on the body pages. You don't want to add any content here in a template frame on a master page. It won't show up. So don't bother with that. But if I get my Smart Selection tool and I click inside the template frame, you can see it does have a flow tag. It says Flow A, Paragraph Style Body, just telling me that this is a tagged frame. Autoconnect is on. If I click in the background frame at the top, I want to show you it has a style called Header pre-assigned. And if I click at the bottom, there's a style called Footer that's pre-assigned. This is happening on both pages. It's exactly the same. Do notice there's a star in front of the F in footer and also in front of the H in header. A star in front of a style name means one of two completely different things. The first thing you probably already know is if you see a star in front of a style name, it has an override. That style, that paragraph does not conform to the style definition for that document. You've changed something about it, and FrameMaker is reminding you that there's an override on that paragraph with the star. That's not this situation. The other reason you see a star is because you've got a style in use in a document that does not appear in the catalog, and that's a good thing. Header and footer should only be used on the master pages. You wouldn't want to put that in the middle of a paragraph on a body page. And so you can't by accident. They don't appear in here unless you specifically choose to add them to the catalogs. So I think that's a good thing that they are pre-assigned, but you can't get to them by accident only here. Now, normally what we're going to put in a running head like this is information that identifies where you are in the document. And we'll do that with variables. I've covered variables in a previous webinar. So what I'm going to do here is just type in static text. It's simply going to repeat. So I just typed that text in with the keyboard. Didn't want to make you watch me because I'm not a great typist when I'm being watched. FrameMaker could have collected that from the chapter title using a variable. We just didn't go that route. So now I want to format it and make it look a little bit better. And for a double-sided document, you typically want to have the identifying information for the file on the outside edges. So somebody flipping through can see where they are in the document, not have to open up all the way to the binding. And this is on the wrong side. Now, FrameMaker has something in place for you to handle this. All four of those background frames automatically ship with 2 tab stops. There's one in the center of each of the 4 frames. That's a center tab. And there's a right align tab on the far right-hand side of each of those 4 frames. So at any point, if you want to push text to the center of the frame, you can put 1 tab in front of it. And if you want to go further, you can add another tab. And very quickly, we can get the text on the opposing sides. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make the text a little bit bigger as the only formatting I'll do here. I'm going to come down to size, and I'm going to choose size 24 and update style. It doesn't fit. I'll deal with that in just a second. But notice that it changed both of them. I updated the style called header. It was pre-assigned to those top 2 frames. They both followed that instruction. Now it's not fitting, so I'll go ahead and get my object selection tool. And I'm just going to grab this and make it a little bit taller. Same thing here, make it a little bit taller. And then what I'd like to do is just move them out of alignment. And this is just to show something. When you're working with technical documents, you may have multi-line running heads. They're not going to fit in that little tiny default size box. You'll have to be able to resize the box and then potentially move them around if you need to. You do all that with the Select Object tool. Frames are frames. They all work the same way. So for the footer, I want to add a page number down here. I'm going to click inside the frame and just run up to Insert, Headers and Footers, and I'll insert a page number. On this side, I want the page number on the right. I'm going to tab it over 2 tabs because those tab stops are in every single background frame on the master pages. And then again, I'll just go to Headers and Footers and insert the page number. I'm also going to make the text a little bit bigger so you can see it. So I'll run to Paragraph Designer, and I'll change the size to maybe 18, update style. It does both because they're both using the style called footer that was pre-assigned. The black line appears because they don't fit. So I will go ahead and just grab one of the frames and make it a little bit bigger. Same thing on the other. And I'm doing this visually so I can be quick about it. In real life, I use object properties where I can get to the numeric size and position values, and I write them down from one side, and I use those numbers on the opposite page so I can get a nice mirror image. I'm just trying to be rough about it. Okay, so let's say that I also decide I should move these out a little bit for some, unknown reason. I want to move these guys around as well. Okay, so when we get back to the view menu and we get back to the body pages, you'll see that content appears automatically. And notice how it's hanging out past that margin on all these pages, just pointing that out. Now, you might do that intentionally because you're going to add some graphic elements around it and pull it back in together. But I want to warn you that if you decide to change the page layout, for example, perhaps just now I figured out, oh, I forgot to enable the side head. No big deal, right? I go to Format. I come down to Page Layout, Column Layout, and I just turn on side head. When I update the entire flow, it's going to change all the body pages, but it's also going to realign the headers and the footers so that they are even with the left and the right margins. So again, they're still sticking out. When I update entire flow, they're going to realign at that point. So either don't change the page layout after you've customized the header footer frames, or go to the master pages and just change the master pages themselves individually. You can select either of these two template frames, and you can't do them both, one and then the other, sequentially, and change their properties through either customize text frame or object properties. And then it will not mess with the headers and footers and try to realign them. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a repeating graphic element, just a black line. I'll draw one while you're watching me and just copy and paste it and be right back. Before I draw this line, though, I want to remind you that if you're trying to draw a straight line, the Shift key is going to do that for you. The FrameMaker has a little twist on that, standard Windows command. You need to hold the Shift key before you start to draw. If you start to draw and then hold the Shift key, FrameMaker is going to delete the line. So I just copied that one line and pasted it elsewhere on the page. Let's go back over to the body pages and see that that gets picked up automatically across the entire document. Anything you add to the default left and right masters is picked up immediately, visible to all the body pages. Now, this is about the point in my introduction to Adobe FrameMaker class where I'm talking about headers and footers, where a student will stop and say, but Barb, I don't think I want the running head on the first page of my chapter, or I want a bigger top margin, or I don't want a page number, or some way that they phrase that question. And think about what they're asking. If you want to remove this content up here and potentially change the top margin, and you do it to the right default master, you'll take it off of page 1, but also 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. So this is where you need to think about using a custom master page. And a custom master page is one that you decide you need. Then you have to create it and format it, and then you have to take responsibility for assigning it. So let's go look at that process. I'm going to remove this text, the line, and change the top margin. So I'll go to the View menu, and I'll go back to the Master Pages. And the command I'm looking for is going to be in the Insert menu. Everything we add is in the Insert menu. So I'll come down and I'll say, okay, I want to add a master page. And FrameMaker says, okay, what do you want to call it? And I'm going to call this Opening for the opening page of my document. And you get to decide if you want to copy from the left master or the right master, or start with an empty page and draw the frames. The least amount of work is making a copy of the right master and just removing what we don't want. So I'll make it copy from right, opening, and add. And now I'm on master page opening 3 of 3. By the way, if you see a typo on the master page name, you can just click on the name and you can modify it if necessary. I'm just going to start deleting some things. Let me go ahead and select this frame and delete it. And I want this, and I want to delete it. And then I want to select the template frame, and I'm going to drag the top metal handle down to 2 inches. I'm increasing the top margin on that page. That's a custom master. If I scroll up, you can see my default left and right master pages are still there. There's just a new one. And by the way, you can have 100 master pages in one FrameMaker document. I have 3. I've never needed more than 4 or 5, 6, something like that. Never double digits, but you can if you want to. Now, when we get back to the body pages, nothing changes because custom master pages require that you decide you need them, then you got to create one, and then you have to assign it. The default masters are assigned automatically. You assign the custom masters. Now, there's 2 ways to do a custom master assignment. One way is manually. The other is a little bit more time intensive to set up, but more automatic once it's done. It involves reference pages, so I'll swing back to that in a few minutes. Let me show you the manual technique first. With page 1 visible, I'm going to go to the Format menu. I'm going to come down to Page Layout. I'm going to come down to Master Page Usage. And I'm going to say, okay, FrameMaker, I want you to apply opening to the current page. And there are other ways to assign this to ranges, odd pages, even pages, replacing an existing master, lots of other ways to assign this to more pages. But this is all we need. I just want to have this happen on page 1. So when we click apply, it now assigns that master. And as I scroll down, you can see it did not impact all the other pages. They all are still using the default left and right masters because we haven't told them not to. If you decide you want to remove a custom master, you can just go back up to Format. You can go to Page Layout, same command, Master Page Usage, and just click on the button that says Right Left for the current page. And FrameMaker can figure out if it needs a right default master or a left default master. When we click Apply, that's done. Let's wrap up our discussion about master pages with a quick look at 2 more advanced uses of master pages. This first document is meant to illustrate a multi-language parallel flow, the concept being that the first column has a version of English, it's just lorem ipsum text, so it's not real English, and the second one has a lorem ipsum version of Cyrillic. Again, it's meant to simulate 2 languages running parallel to each other. And if I zoom out and I click in one of the columns and I choose Edit, Select All and Flow, Flow A is running in column 1. And if I click in the second column and I select all and flow, Flow B is running parallel in column 2. This is a way of approaching a multi-language document if you want to have both visible time. So how would I do that? Well, this would be on the master pages. So if I go to my View menu and choose Master Pages, visualize what a normal master page looks like. It has one large template frame. I took that large template frame, which is using flow tag A, and I just made it narrower. And then I copied the frame and set a copy of it right next to it. And then I changed the flow tag. And the flow tag can be changed either in customized text frame or object properties. Either one will do it. So in here, I just said, okay, this is going to be flow tag B. Everything else is the same. That's all I needed to do. And then on the body pages, I can then flow that text. So that's an example of a second flow tag in a document. Okay, I would like to show you one more use case of multiple flows. In this one, I'd like to show you how you can create a landscape page in a portrait document. I do this because I get a lot of tables in my documentation, and a lot of them are very wide, and they're not going to fit on a portrait page unless I make them size 2 points, which is not legible. Now, in real life, I need to have both a left and a right rotated page. For the example, I'm just going to make a rotated page for the right-hand page. I'm going to add it on page 3, and everything that's currently on page 3 is going to flow forward to page 4. So I'm back on the master pages. This is the default left master page. This is the default right master page. And as I scroll down, I'll show you that I still have the opening custom master page I added a little bit earlier today. And I created one more new custom master page. This one is based on the default right master page. It has everything from the default right. And I've renamed it Rotate Right. So I need to do 2 things. I need to rotate the page counterclockwise, and then I need to unrotate the frame and set a few frame properties. So first thing I'll do is rotate the page. That's Format, Customize Layout, and I want to rotate the page counterclockwise. Now, everything on this custom master has rotated, the headers, footers, everything. And that's going to include the template frame, which I want to modify. So I'll press Escape, GO for Graphics Menu, Object Properties. And the first thing I'm going to do is add a new flow tag. I don't want text from the main flow flowing into these rotated pages if I'm not paying attention. I'm going to give it its own flow tag, and it can't do that. And then I don't need side heads on the rotated page. I'm turning that off. Then I want to set the dimensions. Now in this document, I want to have a 1-inch top margin and 1-inch left margin. Those are the offset values. I'll keep them there. Yours might be different. I want to unrotate the template frame, so I'll type a 0 here. And then I just need to inverse these two numbers. I want the width to be 9 and the height to be 6.5. And when I click apply, that's exactly what happens. We'll need to rename the current flow. And now you can see I have a template frame that is facing me. That edit flow marker is correctly oriented so I can read it. I am back on the body pages, and I want to go ahead and add a disconnected page for my wide table right here. I'm going to go to the insert menu, and on purpose this time, I'm choosing add disconnected pages. I want to add a new page after page 2, and I'd like it to use that new master page I just created. So I'll click add, and I'll pick OK, and sure enough, that's what happens. Now to put a table in here, I can either paste or I can use file, import file. I'll go ahead and paste it, and you can see I've got room for my wide table. Now I am going to zoom back out a bit so you can just see what this looks like. You can see I've got portrait pages, the landscape page, and then back to portrait. What was on page 3 has moved to page 4, and everything else is moving forward. And then one more thing I want to make sure that you're aware of, you need to pay attention to numbering. This one says table 1, this says table 1, and down here this says table 2. It's probably too small to read, but that's what it says. And I want to remind you that when you're dealing with multiple flows, the auto numbers don't update. So what I need to do is manually change this to a 2, come down here, manually change that to a 3, and then unless there are other disconnected pages in this file, all the other numbers will just update automatically. That's how you can create a landscape page in a portrait document. Okay, let's cover the last set of pages in FrameMaker. We've talked about body pages, which holds the content for the document, master pages, which hold repeating information for a document, and now we're ready to discuss reference pages. These are the pages that my students often describe to me as scary, usually because they look at these tables right here and they don't know what's going on. They're not so bad. Let me go ahead and go over them with you so you understand what they do. Remember that my definition for reference pages in FrameMaker is that they hold content that either you want to refer to or FrameMaker needs to refer to. The user never sees them in their entirety. They see snippets from those pages incorporated onto your body pages. And they have a couple other things that they can do for us as well. So let's go take a look. We'll look at the default reference page, the HTML mapping pages, the master page mapping page, and the generated file reference pages. Let's take our final tour through this document in this webinar with a focus on reference pages. To get to the reference pages, again, we go to the View menu and we pick Reference Pages. I'm going to zoom out to show you that this file has 9 reference pages. And I know we're too zoomed out to see any detail, but just to give you an overview, this particular file has 9 reference pages, and I want to go through them and explain how they're used. Beginning with reference page 1. The top of reference page 1 looks very similar to most new default FrameMaker documents. There will be 4 named frames at the top of the first reference page, and these reference pages do have names. The first one is just called Reference. Down here you can see it. The first frame is going to control the space above the first footnote on a page and the line that appears above that first footnote. And the second frame is going to control the space above the first table footnote in every single table. These 2 frames are applied by FrameMaker. We don't have to get involved. We can change what they look like, but we don't have to assign them. They're called named frames. There are some additional named frames on this page, and the next one I'm showing you is called single line. Now you might be thinking, well, she's just reading off the label here. But the label has nothing to do with how these frames work. They're just a courtesy for your coworkers so they know what the frame is named without having to actually select it. When you have a frame selected, the name appears down here at the bottom. Remember, you can click it if you want to change the name. I'm just going to cancel. And FrameMaker cares about the name, not the label. So labels don't need to be there. It's just nice to have them. So there's a default single line frame and a default double line frame. First one has one line, the second one has two. And then from that point down, this is customized to this particular document. There are two additional named frames that you see directly underneath it. This one is called Danger Block. You can see the name again down here. It has a red rectangle inside. And this one is called Caution Block, and it has a yellow rectangle inside. Those are part of this template. And then I added one myself. There is another name frame down here. This is a graphic frame that I added. I changed the background to gray, and then I added a text frame inside, and I added some text. That's also a name frame. For those last 5 frames, we have to decide where we want to use them, and we do that using a feature in the paragraph designer for our paragraph styles. So I'll start here with the 2 automatic frames. This document has a table, and this table has footnotes underneath. They're called table footnotes. If you insert a footnote in a table, it's going to go directly underneath the table. And so one of the frames I showed you was a table footnote frame. It's literally sitting right underneath where my mouse is pointing. I know you can't see it, it's transparent, but the height controls that spacing. If I want a little bit more space, I can increase the height of that frame, and it will automatically update the space above the first table footnote in the entire document. The second and subsequent notes are going to use spacing above and below to control their spacing or the line spacing. Now the page also has a frame above it, so there's a frame sitting here controlling the spacing. I think the spacing on this is fine, but maybe I want to change what that line looks like. That requires me to go back to the reference pages. Let's start with the first table footnote frame. If I want more space below my tables and the first footnote, I can just make it taller. FrameMaker has already increased the spacing above the first footnote under every table across the document. And then for the footnote on the page, I'm not worried about the spacing. It looks fine, but maybe I don't like how this line looks. I want to make it longer or shorter or change the color. Let's do a color change here. I'm going to pick teal, and to be sure you can see it, I'm going to make it a bit thicker as well. Now, FrameMaker has already changed what those look like across the entire document. You can see that below the table and before the first table footnote, we now have more space because that frame is taller now and it's just pushing the text down. And you can also see that the line has picked up the changes that I made. There is another page with some footnotes on it. So just to show you, it changed it there as well. These are document wide. All we have to do is manage what those frames look like and what the line looks like. FrameMaker takes over from there. But I showed you an additional 5 named frames that we have to assign if we want to use them. And so, for example, people will often put a line to separate sections from one to another. And we have 2 frames that contain lines on the reference pages. If I think I want to put either a line above my heading ones or below my heading ones, I can go grab one of those lines using the paragraph designer. So I'm opening up Paragraph Designer, I'm in Advanced Properties, and at the bottom we have 3 drop-down menus. The first one says Frame Above Paragraph, and the names that you see here are the exact names of the named frames on that first reference page. I can choose any of those and put one of those frames above all the heading ones. Or I have a menu that says Frame Below Paragraph. Same frames. I could take any of those and put them below my heading ones or both. I think what I'll do is I'll put a single line below my heading ones and see if that looks okay. It's fine. Maybe I'll try the double line. Don't really like either. I think single line was probably better, so I'll go back with the single line. But as I look at it, I'm thinking it's just a little too thin considering that I have bold text and maybe it should be the same color as my text. I can change that line on the reference pages. So on the reference page, I'm going to select that line. I'm going to change the color to teal, and I'll make it a little bit thicker. So you can see I've changed what it looks like. That has already changed every single heading 1 in the entire document to have a teal line underneath now. And you can see it's changing it here. If I scroll through the document, because there's a lot of heading 1s in here, it's changed all of them all at once. So next I want to show you 2 paragraph styles that are part of this particular document. This file is an adaptation of one of the templates that ships with FrameMaker. So you might be working on a version of this particular document if you're using one of the FrameMaker templates, and you'll notice these styles are in yours as well. There's a style called caution, and there's a style called danger, and just clicking them reformats that paragraph to show the caution look for this document and the danger look for this document. There's a lot going on in here. There's color changes. There's auto numbering producing the words. There's a tab. There's a hanging indent. That's all, part of different webinars that I've talked about. I'm interested here in how this relates to the reference pages. So let me show you how this was created. The danger paragraph has a box behind it that's set to red. So if I go over to my paragraph designer, and I look at that third drop-down menu, it says paragraph box is red. And of course, the caution block has a paragraph box that's yellow. But what's also happening is FrameMaker is using some frames from the reference pages to add padding above and below. If I turn them off, let's say I set them to none and none, and I update the style, this is what the paragraph box looks like by itself. There's not much space above or below. And so I showed you those two name frames. One is yellow and one is red. They're being called in above and below this paragraph to add that extra padding. I've got them back on again. I'm going to update style. And that just looks nicer for both of those styles. So that's a clever use of those reference pages. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, well, I want to put my own things on that reference page. Great. Let me show you how to do that. So back on the reference page, before I show you how to do that, there are a number of graphics that are just sitting over here. They're not in name frames. They're just graphics I imported, import file, and placed on the reference page. Because a reference page can also store things you need all the time. Let's say you're always using these different graphics in your document, and you forget what they're called, and you grab the wrong one. You could put them here as linked graphics, and then when you need one, you can just copy it and put it on your page, paste it, and you could be using it. So it's an easy way to store things you want to get to all the time. But I'm going to go ahead and use one of these to show you how you can create your own name frame and put it above a paragraph. So to do that, I'm going to go over to the toolbox. I'm going to place a graphic frame like this. And I have to name it. And the name is what is important. I'm going to call it alert and set. And you can see the name appearing down at the bottom. Now I'm going to select this graphic and I'm going to copy it. I'll click inside the frame and I'll paste it, and then I'll resize the frame. So I resized my frame with a little bit of space underneath, so I have some space below this graphic when I attach it to a paragraph style. The name is alert. I can absolutely get the text line tool and add a caption above it, and I should for other people using my template. But for this example, I'm not going to put the label in because we really don't need it. As I said, it's just a courtesy. I'm going to go back to the body pages. Now, I'm going to place this above a heading 1, which is not a logical place for it. Really, you'd be putting it probably someplace down here with a danger icon, for example, instead of the words. But just to teach the feature, I've got the heading 1 selected again. I'm going to go to frame above paragraph, and look, there's a new option in both the above paragraph and below paragraph menus. If I click on alert and I update style, FrameMaker is going to go to the reference pages, grab that frame, and position it above the paragraph style I attached it to. If I restyle that paragraph and say, you're not a heading 1, you're actually just a body begin, there's no line, there's no alert, text is in bold, but the style does all that. So when I click back on heading 1 again, all of that comes back all at once. And this is happening to all the styles in the document. So I'm going to press the Enter key to show you one more of these name frames and how you can use them. I created a named frame on the reference page. It's called Disclosure, and it has a disclosure statement inside. I also created a paragraph style that I added to this document that's not part of the template, called Disclosure Statement. And if I click on Disclosure Statement, it's going to go to the reference pages, grab that name frame, and put it below the current paragraph. And now I have text coming in as a reference page object. If I restyle it as body begin, it's gone. If I come back to disclosure statement and use it again, it comes back. Now, if you've got a lot of text you're sharing across multiple documents, you might be better off with text insets. But this is another way that you can be working with frequently used text snippets by putting them on a reference page. And remember, you can import reference pages from one file to another or from one file to a whole book. If you see a typo, you could fix it on one reference page and then import to all the other chapters in the book, and they'd all be fixed. Now, to wrap up reference page 1, the only other thing on here that I haven't mentioned yet is I added a text frame down at the bottom when I type in the word notes. You could use reference pages as a place to add notes to yourself or to your coworkers. Unless you have them in a named frame and you call them in on a page, no one's ever going to see them but you and the other people using this FrameMaker document. Those notes wouldn't print. And some people use these notes for just things they need to remember. Others will document their entire workflow in these notes frames. This is a pretty crowded page. I can't get much in my little frame. That's all the space I had left. But you can always add additional reference pages. I showed you how to do that for adding custom master pages. But since I'm on a reference page, the command now says add reference page. So if you need more of these elements or you want to have more pages for notes, you can add your own reference pages and add more of these things to your document. So that's a look at the first reference page. Let's now move on to the next 5 reference pages. This is the second reference page in this document, and it has an HTML mapping table. This is reference page 2. Here it's reference pages 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 5 reference pages in this document, it's 2 through 6, that have HTML mapping tables. In the 90s, when HTML was new, this was a pretty exciting place to spend time in FrameMaker. Things have changed since the 90s. And in 2024, when I'm recording this webinar, if you want to get an HTML document out of FrameMaker, you're not going to use these old mapping tables. You're going to use the publish pod to produce responsive HTML5, which is way better. However, these tables still appear in every single new default document. You don't need to worry about what they do, and you don't even need to have them in here. I would encourage you to remove them. I'm going to zoom out so you can see them all, and I'll show you how to get rid of them. At this 50% view, you can see all 5 of the HTML mapping tables. I want to get rid of them, but you cannot remove a page that has content on it. So I have to first click in a frame, and then I can choose Select All and Flow, and then press Delete. I'll click in this one because it's a separate flow, and I'll select all. I'm using Control A for Select All and Flow, and I'll again press Delete. Once that content is gone, we can remove the pages. I'll do one with you because I've got to do them one at a time. You don't want to watch me do all 5 of them. So to get rid of one, I'll go to the Format menu. I'll come down to Document, and I'll choose Delete Page HTML. 1 gone, 4 to go. I'll be right back. Okay, I removed all 5 of them individually. They're now gone, and we're down to just 4 reference pages. Let's go to this second one now. This is the master page mapping table. Now, we created custom master pages in the previous exercise, and I showed you how to manually assign a master page to a particular page, which was easy, but we're humans and we might forget. So FrameMaker has a better way of doing this. There's a feature called Apply Master Pages, and the very first time you invoke that command, if this reference page doesn't exist with this table, FrameMaker will create a reference page, and it's going to call it Master Page Maps, and it will create a table. Now, the table will be empty, but it'll have a table here for you. And the idea behind this table is you can set up the master pages you want to assign. In this case, I've got opening appearing multiple times. That's the one we made in the other exercise. And then you can associate it with a paragraph style. So in our document, we only have one style that I want to use it on. It's the heading 0. That's the title style. And this table is saying, okay, FrameMaker, if Barb chooses Apply Master Pages, you should look for any page that has a heading 0 and assign a right master page called Opening, and just assign it to that single page. You can do this for just one instruction or multiple instructions. And because this is a template file, I might eventually have a contacts page associated with it, and a legal page, and the index, and the table of contents headings. So you can have multiple rules in here, and all can be applied at one time with one command. We even had somebody come on the forums to ask how to add a new reference page, because she had filled up this entire reference page with these rules, and she had more rules she needed to add. She couldn't fit them. So we showed her how to go to insert and add a reference page, and it worked great. Now in this case, it's already here. I'm just going to go back to the body pages, and back on body page 1, you can see I haven't applied my custom master yet, but I do have a heading 0. So if I go to Format, Page Layout, and I bypass the manual application of a master page and come down to Apply Master Pages, FrameMaker will go find that table, read what it says, and do whatever we told it. In this case, it said, if you see a heading 0, assign the custom master. And that's exactly what it did. What a time saver. I just opened up a book so I can show you that that command also works with books. Assuming that you have the master page mapping table in your documents, when you update your book, which I might do 100 times in a single day, you have the option to apply master pages while you update your book. Again, if you set those tables up so that they're in the documents, you can apply master pages at the book level or at the document level to ask FrameMaker to go read that table and assign the master pages based on the paragraph style on that page. Pretty cool. Let's go look at the last 2 reference pages. I'm going to go back to View and Reference Pages, and let's scroll down to see the last 2. So the last 2 reference pages in here are specifically to support generated files. There's a whole webinar on generated files. If you haven't seen it and have questions, go watch that first because it explains how these generated files work. But basically, a generated file, like a table of contents or an index or a list of figures, list of tables, list of affected pages, are all controlled by a reference page that shows FrameMaker how the building blocks should be organized and what they should look like. And you can always see these reference pages in the actual generated files. You will sometimes see them in your template files because that way they're traveling with the template. And that's what's happening here. There are 2 generated file pages in here. The first one has the name TOC. And at the top, it has the hyperlink information. Just ignore that text up here. If you have hyperlinks enabled on a table of contents, FrameMaker needs these 2 lines for the hypertext links to work. And then everything else is controlling the presentation of that content on the page. For example, this is a heading 0 TOC paragraph. And so it's going to have the word chapter, the chapter number, and then the chapter name. And these different building blocks are controlling what that table of contents is going to look like by paragraph style. There's also an index reference page in here. And again, those top 2 lines are the hypertext linking information up here. And then all of this is controlling what the index would look like. You may or may not see these in your template documents, but putting them in here means they travel with your template and they're always available when you need them when you make a generated file. And with that, we have completed our look at the reference pages. We did it. We got through working with pages in Adobe FrameMaker. The goal of this webinar was to help you achieve clarity on working with body pages and master pages and reference pages and understanding their role within a FrameMaker document. I hope I've helped you get there. Remember, I am Barb, finder with Rocky Mountain Training. We have online training classes on FrameMaker. We have public classes and custom classes and one-on-one coaching for an hour or 2 if you just have a few specific questions. The best place to get questions, though, that doesn't cost anything is just to meet us on community.adobe.com. Scroll down to FrameMaker, click on discussions, and ask us whatever you like. We're always happy to help. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope to see you all again at some point. Bye.